that the Fisheries Department has been associated with. And when I say associated with, this is both in relation to some trials that has been done by the department itself, as well as in the context of the department having a regulatory role. The department does license researchers and exploratory fishing ventures for deep sea fishing. One of the reasons that we have not had industrial scale fishing in Belize generally is that the stocks are just not there. And the exploratory fishing that we have done has been very, very limited in scope. In 1972, the Food and Agriculture Organization convened an exploratory fishing venture. That was interrupted largely by heavy sea states, quote unquote bad weather, but the yields that were harvested was very, very limited. I have been at Fisheries Department for 27 years, ending, I believe, in 2014. And during that time, I can recall that there were two vessels. One of these vessels was associated with National Fishermen Cooperative. He was a gentleman from the Cayman Islands. He basically came to Belize and fished for 2 weeks, packed up shop and left in the deep sea.
Not the EEZ.
Not the EEZ, but the deep sea. Keeping in mind that the EEZ only came into force for us since 1995. Prior to that, and it's hard to speak about this without the reference of a map, but prior to that, there was international waters between Turnef and the main Barrier Reef. There was international waters between Turnef and Glover's Reef, and between Glover's Reef and Lighthouse Reef. Since Belize has passed the Maritime Areas Act, all of those seas are now internal seas. So Belize has gained tremendously in terms of territorial seas. What the interests of the deep sea and the exclusive economic zone in terms of fishing is mainly related to game fish species. These are the guys with big yachts that are out there essentially pulling a line for hours and they will catch one tuna, but not for commercial take. Not in my estimation.
They'll throw it back.
Sorry?
They'll throw it back or no, they keep it?
That's a good one. As my knowledge base is that at some point, much of the species that these guys will catch is not really prime fishes for the table. So normally they will keep it as long as it takes to mount a replica of it. So they're not fishing to take really.
The report on Taiwan are these rumors. What have you heard about those? In a sense, you're saying it doesn't even make any sense. So,
well, my familiarity with it is probably as good as the general public. My take of it is that maybe about 2 years ago, I understand that the Taiwanese had engaged Belize and or vice versa by way of research. And research has not been qualified because I don't know if it means exploratory fishing or I don't know if it means sort of pure research. But my view is that if it means exploratory fishing, then I have said what I said, that if the exploratory fishing is such that one hopes to break even, I don't think that would be in the cards. So I can see where a sort of government to government research effort to understand what is in the deep sea by way of species and what is in the deep sea by way of biomass or the amount of fish, that is always good to know.
but they're talking about getting our tuna.
The tunas that would be in Belize are seasonal, and those would, well, let me rephrase that. What we would refer to as some of the coastal pelagics would include some tunas. There's a tuna called the little thunny. It's a very small tuna, That is really not, you will not see that on any market, any global market. It is limited in distribution, and there is no quote unquote little tunny fishing in Belize, simply because you'll not find them in abundance in schools
Okay.
that you will see in these industrial trawling circumstances.
So then, like, what would we expect to find in the EEZ and deep sea? Of course, we know that there's a fish stock assessment that's supposed to be conducted with funding from the IDB and Taiwan Technical Assistance.
That's interesting, because you know that I am volunteering with the Belize Federation of Fishers, and we have partnered with the Summit Foundation, and so there has been some detailed fish stock assessment that is basically showing that much of the species in Belize, both finfish and shellfish, lobster, conch, snappers, and groupers, are heavily fished. Some of them are in stages of depletion. If the Taiwanese initiative is to assess what I would refer to as offshore stocks, which are in the deeper part of the Belizean Sea, including the EEZ, there's nothing wrong with that. But I do not believe, based on the ecosystems, the dynamics of ecosystems, that there will be anything there to harvest in commercial quantities. One of my professors from the University of the West Indies, Professor Ivan Goodbody, you know, sometimes people say things to you that sticks with you. His description of the Caribbean, especially in relation to reef systems, is that the Caribbean is quote unquote a productive desert. And it's not a conflict of term, as much as to say that in the vast expanse of the Caribbean Sea, you will find these oases of production that are mainly the reef systems. And that is the backbone of fishery production in Belize, and it is the backbone of the fishing industry in Belize. It's reef related. There are some submerged reef, but after a certain depth, these reefs are not productive. Reef systems very much, at least coral reef systems, very much depend on sunlight. And so generally below 500 feet, there's not much by way of reef production and reef productivity.